Hi, everyone. My name is Musa Kalenga. It's so good to be back. Welcome to the first African Tech Conversation interview that we've put out in actually quite a while. So I've missed you all, but I'm really, really pleased to have a program here with a Kenyan blockchain enthusiast, data wrangler, and all-round nice guy, entrepreneur Michael Kimani. We've got a really cool conversation that's going to be happening, and I can guarantee you that you're going to learn something new because this world is new to me as well. And every time I have conversations with, bright individuals like this, I definitely learn something. And so today, that's my hope for you that's tuning in. Before we get into that, just a big thank you to the Cello Community Fund for getting behind African Tech Roundup's current season of blockchain-themed learning content. Over the next several months, all of you can look forward to much more exclusive interviews with innovators from Africa's blockchain scene, insight-filled written think pieces, op-eds that come from the entrenched specialists as well as talented journalists all over the world and of African origin, and even live interactive Twitter spaces where you can be part of the conversation. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on, and you can be really excited about that. And thank you to the Cello Community Fund for making it happen. So make sure that you don't miss a thing. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at African Roundup, or search for African Tech Roundup on Facebook and LinkedIn. And you can find our profiles and follow us there. And as always, we welcome engagement. We welcome any comments, feedback. It's really great to interact with you even outside of the podcast. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about Cello's mission to build a financial system that creates conditions for prosperity for everyone, you can visit cello.org, that's CELO.org, and apply for a Cello Community Fund grant like the one making this podcast possible. You can head to the cellocommunityfund.org, right? So if you're interested in being able to get some of the products and the things that you're building into a space that can ultimately build them out and support the initiatives that you're working on, make sure you head to cellocommunityfund.org. Okay, so it gives me the utmost pleasure to welcome Mr. Kimani. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you, Musa, for hosting me today.
An absolute
pleasure.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you, sir. I've been looking forward to this conversation and chatting with you offline and seeing some of the stuff you've been up to. Really, really excites me, and I'm pretty sure our audience are going to get some deep insight in where you're at and the exciting opportunities that are available to Africans who embrace this new wave that we're in. So I'm going to jump straight in, if you don't mind. Everybody's got a love story. Everybody's got a love story about technology and how they ended up doing what they're doing. So I'd like to ask you the first question really is just to give me a sense of what's your love story? How did you get into this world? Why did you get into this world? And what made you fall in love with the opportunities in this world?
Wow, that's a great question. And I think it's really going to set the foundation for my story into getting into crypto and blockchain and Web3, which is what we're about to talk about. But I would say Bitcoin was probably my first love in this African startup tech ecosystem. So the year is 2013. Just completed university. I'm waiting 6 months to graduate.
What did you study?
It's taken me 7 years. Yeah.
Why did you study, if I may ask?
So, okay, let me take a step back. I was in university at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. It's one of the most elite technology universities in Kenya.
Okay.
And I studied electronic communications and computer engineering. It was a 5-year course, but for some reason, I dropped out for a year. I had to stay out for a year. I think I was discontinued at some point. So I ended up taking almost 7 or 8 years to complete my education. So this is December 2013. Yeah, this is like my last paper. I'm about to complete campus. And in that year, I'd come across Bitcoin somehow. I was living back home with my parents, and Bitcoin was really interesting. I discovered it through a similar show to this one. It was a BBC podcast, and they were talking about Bitcoin, and I found it really fascinating. And that's when I began to explore it. And when I completed my university study that year, I was waiting to graduate. I kind of spent a lot more time reading up on it a bit more, exploring it. I think naturally I'm someone who's interested in new things.
Yes.
So I kind of got lost in a rabbit hole. And I mean, at that point in time, I joined a prop trading firm. So I was trading derivatives, future derivatives at a prop trading firm in Nairobi for about 2 months. And one day, this guy, my boss, called me in and asked me to write a resignation letter because he thought I couldn't cut it. I was too distracted. I was always staring out the window.
Wait, so he
from
asked you
our
to
fixed
resign,
job.
basically?
Yeah. So I think it's like a nice way of firing you, sacking you. So he asked me to write a resignation letter. And I think that was like the lowest moment to get full into crypto. So I wrote the resignation letter and I went back home. And my dad was also asking me to move out. He felt it was about time I manned up because I'm old right now. It's taken so long for me to wrap up university. So my friend Kevin Jeru helps me move out. I've just lost my first job and I'm kind of lost. I'm like, I don't know what to do. But I have this one thing. I have my laptop. I have my computer. I have $600 in savings in the bank account. And I have writing skills. I've always had writing skills. So these are the only tools that I have to kind of make it in the world. And as soon as I move out, I'm like, wow, this Bitcoin thing looks interesting. Let me see if I can find any jobs about writing about Bitcoin. And I end up finding a role for this company known as CEX Exchange. This is one of the earliest crypto exchanges. And I think it was based out of somewhere in Eastern Europe. And somehow I end up getting a job with them writing price analysis, Bitcoin price analysis articles for them. And this is because I obviously have a financial background, trading derivatives. I also studied finance whenever I was not I was not enrolled in university. I also have my engineering knowledge, which helps me like understand this thing as a technology. And my finance background helps me understand this thing from the massive impact it can have in the financial system. So I'm able, and combine that with my writing skills, I'm able to sit down and look at the markets and kind of figure out a story every week for our readers. And I end up getting paid about $100.
Okay.
And this becomes my job for the next 6 months. And I love it. I love it because someone is paying me to write. They're paying me in crypto. And I can spend the rest of my time studying Bitcoin. So really, this was my first love with Bitcoin because it got me my first job. It got me at one of the lowest moments in my life. And it really just opened a world of opportunities. So looking back right now, seated at my laptop and all I could do at my desktop, and all I could do was just get lost in Bitcoin forums, any article I could find, any community I could find where people are talking about Bitcoin, just to understand and convince myself and find the conviction to sort of invest myself in this new phenomenon.
Very nice.
I think I had the right foundation to just see this was going to be something amazing. I think the hardest part was first convincing myself. And this is why I ended up spending a ton of time just reading and engaging with anonymous people online, just to convince myself that it was worth investing my time and energy in this thing. And I have to say, right now, looking back,
it was a worthwhile investment.
It feels magical. It feels magical. I don't know how to describe it. And I think this is the first time I've been able to share that moment with the world. There's very few people, maybe 2 or 3 people who know that story.
Excellent. Well, thank you. That was really insightful. I think a big part of why we do these kind of podcasts is to get the backstory. Often people don't really understand kind of how much effort and time it takes for people like yourself to get to where they're at with $600, a laptop, and writing skills. Seems obvious, but it's taken some time. And then in 2017, you decided to form the Blockchain Association of Kenya. Why was this important at that stage?
So let me step back a bit. So in 2017 is when I actually like registered it and got it started.
Yeah.
But the idea really started in 2014. So
Yeah.
something that happened in 2014 while I was out and about writing, I found a Kenyan community, an early Kenyan community, early Kenyan Bitcoin community that was holding meetups.
Yeah.
And this community was organized by BitPesa. BitPesa is one of the earliest crypto Bitcoin startups in Africa and in Kenya. And it was founded by Elizabeth Rosiello. And as part of their go-to-market initiative, they'd run community events at some of the technology hubs in Nairobi. So this particular one was happening at the Nairobi garage. And I remember checking online and seeing, wow, there's other people in Kenya who have discovered Bitcoin and they kind of see the potential. And it was really amazing for me. And I had to sign up. So I signed up. I even went as far as writing an email to Elizabeth, asking her how could I contribute to this meetup that was happening. And she was like, you know what, you could come in and maybe talk about how Bitcoin can help remittances and so forth. And I was super excited. And when I went for this meetup, I did such a great job at like dumbing down the technology for the attendees. And I think Elizabeth and Charlene, who I'm super grateful for, I think they saw a spark in me and they decided to call me up the following week on Wednesday. And they asked me, hey, Michael, what do you think about running a nonprofit organization in Nairobi that will champion the Bitcoin gospel, as it were, in Kenya and East Africa, and we'll give you $400 for it. So I was like, wow. I mean,
where do I sign?
At this point in my life, yeah, where do I sign up? This is like my second job now, you know? Yeah. So the name we had at the time was the African Digital Currency Association.
Okay.
And I decided I was tasked with running meetups on a regular basis across the technology hubs, which I did with Fava. And I was also tasked with trying to register this organization, which proved a bit difficult. So I think that was the first time I found out how things are not as easy in the real world as they are online. Like in the real world, if you want to register any organization with a name currency in it, you may need to go talk to the central banks. So registering this organization was difficult to begin with. And I ended up running around in circles until I finally realized that this is going to be harder than I thought. But I still ended up doing the meetups. And I think a lot of this is documented online. There's pictures, there's articles I'd write. So I really went full in because I was passionate about this technology, really. And I really wanted others to hear about this and see if they could find a place in it. So in 2017 was like a comeback where I felt I had enough resources to put together an organization. At that time, I was a co-founder of a Bitcoin company with my friend Matthew. So we had an interest in setting up a nonprofit organization. And we registered the Blockchain Association of Kenya for 25,000 Kenya shillings, which is about $250. And really, that was the beginning of the Blockchain Association of Kenya. A lot of people don't know that. And I went on to build a community leveraging the Blockchain Association as a brand. So I used the Blockchain Association of Kenya as a way to build a community and network that ended up growing from 10 people to 100,000 people.
Wow.
So that was really amazing. And again, this is another story a lot of people don't know about me. But I really love that experience because for me, that was like it was like building a startup, just like building a community. And right now, a lot of the skills that people pay me for now
were built in that experience.
Those years.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic. I like the fact that you're sharing stories that not many people know. I mean, this platform, African Tech Roundup, is about getting down to the stuff that you won't find that you know Google easily. So thank you for that. Firstly, secondly, obviously you've explained that getting some foundational aspects of blockchain and trying to ingrain that has been fairly difficult. But we've now reached a point where it's becoming slowly but surely becoming mainstream. I mean, you're quite advanced. But if I was to ask you the three things, I mean, blockchain for basics or blockchain for dummies, what are the three things that an interested listener or an avid individual that really doesn't have much knowledge of this world would need to know? What would you say those three things are? Blockchain as a body of knowledge is so vast, and I think part of starting to learn about it is identifying a starting point. So, if you were to choose three things that someone should try and get to grips with regards to blockchain, what would those three things be?
So tough question, but you're right. There's so much in blockchain.
Yeah.
But I think from my experience and my journey, one of the things that definitely highlight and pick out would be the philosophy that informs blockchain. Like this technology is first and foremost informed by strong principles, strong opinions that people have, like the people who birthed this technology and they built this technology. They really have strong opinions around the kind of freedoms that people should be allowed to enjoy online. Yeah. And I think Bitcoin itself is grounded in a philosophy based on allowing a form of money to exist that is separate and independent from any state or any country or any nation or any central bank. Yeah, and it was really birthed at the height of the financial crisis in 2008.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I think there's a lot of philosophy around Bitcoin, such as freedom of money, freedom of censorship, and this is really what underpins this technology. And crypto is usually the first use case that's been built on these philosophies as a way to allow the internet to have a currency or a form of value that is independent of the state. The other thing I'd pick out is the current state of the world. So the current state of the world is highly polarized. It's fragmented with different nations having different interests. Yet online, this boundary is kind of blur. So we live in a world where I can talk to someone in the United States, interact with them, get into an economic transaction, and not have to care what country I'm from, and that person wouldn't have to care what country I'm from. Yeah. So we kind of live in a world right now where the real world boundaries and geographies have kind of been blurred online.
Yeah.
And there is a gap or a need for technology that is neutral or transcends geographical lines. And blockchain is really one of these technologies. It's because it allows us to have a way to record things that is not dependent on any single one of us, that's not dependent on any single country, that's not dependent on any single server, you know? And considering how we are all online from different countries and we are transferring value and interacting in economic affairs, the timing was really perfect. There was something about the timing where it's almost as if the world was craving this, and this technology just somehow emerged. So there's that as well.
Okay.
I think the last thing the last thing I'd point out is the fact that we're online and it's really easy to sort of copy paste things. So today, Musa, I could go to your Twitter and copy something that you've shared and rewrite it somewhere else and not have to give attribution, you know? And yet you probably put in some significant creative effort into creating whatever piece of work that is, whether it's writing or a drawing and so forth. So we kind of have a need of tracking who was the first person who made this. We have a need for provenance online because in the real world, it's a bit different. We have these registries that we rely on where we go and register something the first moment it's created. But how do we do this for the online world where the boundaries between countries are blurred? So blockchain as a shared piece of record where all of us can record whatever it is that we want as a way to prove that I was the first person to create this. It also serves as a critical spine for the massive web economy that we have right now. Yeah, so I think those are three things that come to mind.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So just to summarize, I mean, you've mentioned this idea around independence. The financial crisis created a lot of mistrust in the world. And so, I suppose a direct consequence of that is that there was a need for, independence or freedom, as you put it. The world that we currently live in, the kind of the polarization, the blurring of the lines geographically. We've all heard the stories about, an Africa without boundaries, as an example, really creates an opportunity for blockchain. And then the last thing you mentioned is almost kind of the point of first origin. How do we start to get provenance around, who first created or who first came up with something? I think those are really, really great areas to study in their own right, also fairly broad. But if you get those foundational principles, I think we're off to a good start. What I'd like to understand and just know from you, on the 8th of January, you posted a really interesting love letter to Africa saying, here are 8 types of commercial interests vying for a piece of your future, the crypto Africa opportunity. And you spoke about big tech, startups, browser or companies, card companies. You spoke about quite a few things. And I'd like for you to just elaborate on 1 or 2 of those commercial interests that you think are really interesting opportunities immediately that will move the needle for our continent. And why does blockchain enable them to do that?
Okay, thanks for bringing that up. First of all, that tweet I shared with my infographic was, I always share stuff on Twitter to get feedback from people. So since then, I've gotten some feedback and I'm going to redo it into an article for one of the African publications, and it might include 2 or 3 more extra categories. But that tweet really summarized a lot of what I've seen, the people I've talked to, the trends I'm tracking. Like, Africa is really primed to reap the benefits of this new upgrade to the internet. And I say that with quotes, because there's a lot of disagreement about what this upgrade looks like.
Yeah.
But it's definitely clear that the internet from today, or ever since crypto came up, is going to look a whole lot different than it would have if we didn't have it. And Africa seems really primed for this because of the fact that we have millions of people who their first internet experience was through a mobile phone, was through a smartphone.
Yeah.
And this didn't happen until after 2010. So really, before 2010, it's fair to say we didn't have a huge mass of people on the internet. But the rest of the world did, like Europe and the United States, Asia. But Africa, mass internet adoption really came through the support of smartphones. So Africa is at a time where we have millions of people on smartphones, millions of people connected to the internet, millions of people on social media platforms like WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, millions of people trading on these platforms. So there's a lot of commerce and trade going on. There's millions of young people in Africa right now connected to the internet. Some of them are creators. Some of them are consuming content. Some of them are working jobs online. So Africa is like the darling of investors and anyone of tech investors, because they can see a huge opportunity to capitalize on this mass market. So one of the commercial interests that I find interesting, that is interested in Africa right now, is Google. So a lot of 90% of the phones, smartphones in Africa run on these operating systems known as Android. And Android is an operating system that is partially owned by Google. So you have these millions of devices running Android software. So it effectively means Google has all these millions of customers coming on board their ecosystem, coming on board their platform, coming on board their products like Gmail. And there's always been one critical piece missing. Yeah. And this has been, if we wanted to collect payments from these millions of people in Africa for, let's say, a simple online service. Yeah. Let's say we wanted to collect money that was as small as $0.50, like let's say 10 Kenya shillings. 10 Kenya shillings is a tenth of a dollar. Yeah? How would we go about that? And it turns out that the history of the internet was, because it happened before 2010, before massive numbers of African users were on the internet, it was kind of designed without considering payment methods that Africans use right now. So right now, mobile money is used by 400 million people in Africa. Airtime currency is used by even more people. Yet, if you go to the internet today, these payment methods are not natively integrated. Yeah. So companies like Google are looking at this opportunity, this crypto blockchain opportunity, as a way to include us in this digital economy. And one of the simplest ways to include people is to allow them to send money into the digital economy and send money out of this digital economy, so that they can do things like create content, put it up somewhere, sell it, and cash out. So this payment gateway is a really critical point. And this is why companies like Google are really interested in Africa and the crypto opportunity in Africa right now.
It's funny you should mention that. I read an article. I think it's Google's acquired a stake in Airtel, if I remember correctly, and it's a small stake. But to your point, I think the solving for this ecosystem requires a few different parts of the puzzle, and ultimately being able to enable microtransactions of that nature with verification, identity, etc. starts to be part of how you get the value out of a continent like ours. So I think I agree with you on that point. I think the second one that caught my eye. Sorry, I'm kind of interjecting, but I'm quite excited. You mentioned browser companies like Opera as potential commercial interests with blockchain. What did you have in mind when you thought about that?
Yeah, so when Africans, so millions of Africans are on Android phones, on Android smartphones. Over 60% of these smartphones are manufactured by Chinese companies. And if you think about when you want to access the internet, you usually either go to an application or you go to your internet browser. So browser companies, there are two companies that have a significant market share across all these smartphone-enabled devices and these millions of people accessing the internet. And one of them is Opera, and the other one is Google. And then third and fourth is Mozilla, and there's one more browser, I think it's known as UTC. So these browser companies are like the interface for these African users on the internet. Say when they're reading an article, a tabloid article, say if they want to Google something and find out an answer to their question. So there's a high engagement between the millions of African users and these browser companies. And browser companies are always thinking about how can we engage with our users more, And one of the things that happened a couple of years ago was Opera, which is one of the most popular browser companies in Africa, got into crypto. And they got into crypto by adding a crypto wallet embedded within the browser. Now, if you're not actively tracking this industry, you may not realize the significance of that. But generally in this industry, in the blockchain crypto industry, what's happening is you will effectively be able to go to any application and log into that application with a wallet that could contain some form of crypto within it. So, for example, you could go to a website where you're reading an article, and because you've been regularly coming back to read this article from this news site, such as Opera News, they would want to reward you for the time and attention that you spend reading their articles. And the way they do this is they reward you with crypto tokens. So the future we are heading into, we are going to have wallets or crypto wallets or wallets that can hold value embedded in each and every one of our transactions, whether you're reading an article somewhere, whether you're talking to a friend through an instant messenger. So embedding crypto wallets into browsers is one of the key trends of the crypto blockchain industry and this emerging economy. So browser companies have an interest in positioning themselves for the African users as a place, not only a place where they can engage users, maybe through content, but possibly also in this new emerging economy, a place where users can earn tokens or value for engaging with content, or earn value from, let's say, things like taking surveys online, or maybe earn tokens from things like creating content online. So it makes sense for these companies to positioning themselves into the crypto economy. So the question really is, which are the most popular browser companies in Africa? And right now, Opera and Google are top of the list, and it totally makes sense. I can see why they are vying for a piece of the African crypto opportunity.
And you know, and when you mention that, I mean, I think it's important to just think about what that means, right? So embedding wallets, or crypto wallets into browsers, that's phenomenal, and also it creates a lot of questions. It creates questions around, how much education needs to happen for consumers to understand exactly what that means. It creates questions around, does this happen automatically? Is there privacy issues here? It creates questions around, what's the journey of educating people, exactly relating to, what we see now in terms of personal information, interaction, engagements, etc. So, the big thing for me is that if you look at any of these interests, commercial interests that you've identified, be it browser companies, be it card companies, big tech, the real question comes around governance, right? It comes around, who's creating these rules and how are they being implemented. And if I also reflect on what's been happening lately with the Central Bank of Kenya, they've publicized a point of view with regards to how they're going to govern and ensure that everything is above board, or at least managed in a way that makes sense. How will we get to a point where there's some level of control, if at all possible, that helps us liberate the opportunities that come with an amazing innovation like a crypto wallet embedded into a browser? How far are we away from that, and what are your thoughts? I know you recently published a great piece on what the central bank in Kenya are doing. So can you share with us your opinion on that?
Yeah, so I think one of the lessons I've learned growing up as an adult, one of the biggest lessons I've learned growing up as an adult, is that everything is political. Like whenever there's more than one person involved in anything, there's already some politics starting to rear its head. I consider politics as like negotiations between people or entities or institutions, sometimes countries, So I consider all that politics. And
Right.
it's fair to say that the internet is political. Yeah. So the internet and the technology that we use, it is all political. Because, for example, right now, out of all the millions of smartphones that have shipped to Africa, 60% of those smartphones are manufactured in China, by Chinese companies. So you got to ask yourself, what does that mean for Africa? If you look at social media platforms, millions of Africans are on WhatsApp and Facebook, and these are primarily platforms that are owned by companies that live or are housed in in the West, like in the United States or in
Yeah.
Singapore, So even the internet where we have conversations, sometimes conversations are censored if they don't adhere to the rules and regulation, let's say, of a social media platform like Twitter. So the mere fact that all of us are spending so much time online doing all sorts of things, such as conversations or commerce, has inherently made the internet and the web a space where different factions are vying for control, or there's some politics going on in that environment. And one example is, I think it was last year, the ex-president of the United States, he made an order that banned Huawei equipment from being used by the United States government. And part of his order affected companies like Google, which had to sever ties with the Chinese companies like Huawei.
Yeah.
Now that story looks really simple, but on the ground, if you come to Nairobi right now, there's people selling phones at electronic shops who are not able to sell some certain types of phones because of the political issues between Google, the US, Huawei, and China. So because Google owns a significant part of the Android operating system, and it has full control of the Google Play Store, it was effectively able to ban Huawei from adding Play Store as part of its products. And that meant that users in Africa would, buying a Huawei smartphone, are not able to access Google Play Store and somehow have to figure out another way to download their favorite apps on their phone. So I'm just sharing this to show you how technology is inherently political. Yeah. So back to your question. Yeah. I think what I'm seeing with crypto and blockchain, what they did is they introduced the most extremist form of liberated technology. Yeah. Like technology that can be accessed by anyone, regardless of their color, of their race, of their country. So let's say, for example, something like Bitcoin. Anyone can access Bitcoin today if they have access to a smartphone and an internet connection. Yeah. But if you look at financial services like credit cards, PayPal, you'd kind of have to go through a rigorous KYC process, asking for your documents, asking for where you live, just to get access to that financial service. Whereas with something like Bitcoin is just like cash. No one will ask you for your ID. So what crypto and blockchain did is, and this goes back to something I said earlier on our call, where there's a lot of philosophy informing the design and the emergence of this technology. So crypto and blockchain is like the extreme end of control. So if you think of a spectrum where on one end you have full control, and on the other end you have the Wild West or no control, that is Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain. And that has really disrupted like any plans, any organizations that operate based on control. Any plans they might have had were disrupted because
that's every government in the world, right?
Yes, yes. It's every government. It's a central bank. It's Google, and then this is also it's the technology giants, and this is coming in at a point in time where there is already all these political fights over who controls the internet, So now that means you're adding, like, you're throwing, what's the phrase? Throwing
fuel
something
in the
into the chicken coop, yeah?
Or you're throwing a hen amongst the chickens.
Yes, it's a fox in the chicken coop.
That's right.
It's a fox. Yeah, so this is exactly what this technology have done. And a lot of people call this game theory, where just adding a small element into something completely changes the outcomes in future. So right now, I'd say what's really happening, even when we see the Central Bank of Kenya saying, no, we're not allowing crypto, or Russia saying we are banning crypto, or the United States saying China has too much control on Bitcoin mining and so forth and so forth. This
It's a
is,
knee-jerk response, right? It's a natural
yes,
thing to do when you're used to control.
yes, absolutely. This is like, it's like you've gone from a stable environment into chaos, and now everyone is rushing for their door. Like, let's figure this out. What do we do? How do we regain control? How did the US remain significant in future and so forth? So everything really you see coming out from especially established institutions or established powers of control or epicenters of control is really just trying to figure out, okay, how do we manage this and still somehow secure a place for ourselves in the future? I think everything can be, I'm confident everything can falls under that. Yeah. So if you're reading any piece of news around some country banning Bitcoin or some country adopting Bitcoin, like El Salvador, it's just the introduction of these anarchist or extreme anti-control technology into the conversation of the future of the internet. Yeah, it's the elephant in the room.
Yeah, which is super ironic, right? Because the very thing that's made blockchain so appealing, the independence, the freedom, the ability to be borderless, is the very thing that is seemingly constraining its scale, its ability to scale. But what that ultimately means is that there's going to be an entire shift. There's an emergent, there'll be emergent centers of power that are decentralized, and part of that decentralization is what's making a lot of these organizations, companies, governments extremely, extremely nervous. And you've had the pleasure of consulting to some of these governments, so I'm very interested in maybe one or two lessons or anecdotes that you've taken from your consulting assignments, and for you, what you think is important to take from those lessons or observations.
Yeah. I mean, just to build on your point, like, this technology really has introduced new ways to think about how we can govern the internet. I think that's really the biggest takeaway, and just going back to that example of Android, where Google owns a significant control over the Android operating system, which runs on a majority of smartphones in Africa. In this new crypto blockchain world, the operating systems of this new world are not owned by a single company, are not owned by Google. They're owned by a collective of people. And that's just to show you how this emerging economy, this trend is also political, in the sense of reshaping who can be an owner of a platform, who can be which are the new centers of power, just like you said. Going back to your question, I mean, I think governments are definitely watching this technology in regards to
watching and trembling.
Watching and trembling, like the central bank governor of Kenya, or the central bank governor of Kenya. I'm not his biggest fan, and that's because since 2014, I was trying to bring Bitcoin and crypto to the people, and I'd say his policies were in the way of my objectives. So I'm not a big fan of it. But I think a lesson from that is, even though the central bank of Kenya, the governor of the central bank of Kenya, he set out some restrictions that prevented companies like BitPesa, which was the first company I worked for, from operating in our countries and offering people service in the same way you'd get services from a bank. But inadvertently, what he did is he pushed people to seek other ways of accessing crypto. And because crypto and blockchain is designed, like I said earlier, to be accessible to anyone with no barriers. Kenya is now the leading country in Africa for crypto peer-to-peer transactions. So even though people cannot use their bank accounts to buy crypto, they were somehow able to figure out that you could swap Bitcoin between two people the same way you can cash. And that's been the biggest story of Africa, that despite these central bank governors from Nigeria, from South Africa, from Kenya, from Ghana, despite their
People still
opposition
figured it out.
to this technology, they have inadvertently created the biggest crypto peer-to-peer market in the world. Africa is processing about $105 billion, according to chain analysis, in crypto peer-to-peer payments. Africa is the fastest growing crypto peer-to-peer market in Africa, growing at 1,200% between June 2020 and July 2021. Africa is the number one region in the world for crypto peer-to-peer transactions. So you can see how these political dynamics play out. One central bank governor wakes up, says, I'm banning this thing, but he ends up accelerating the adoption of alternative crypto peer-to-peer tools. So you asked me a good question about what are interesting projects I've seen from the government. I think maybe two I'd mention is, as part of my work at the Blockchain Association of Kenya, I got to meet a lot of high government officials, like the Treasury Minister, like the ICT Minister. And it was really strange to see how disconnected they were from this technology, because it seems they were completely disconnected from how fast it was accelerating. And
I can just imagine. I really can just imagine.
Yeah, so that was exciting to see, because I could see, wow, this technology is going to surprise a lot of these old institutions,
Yeah.
I think the other project that I saw that I worked on, and I won't mention the country, I worked on a blockchain ID project for an African country. And
Nice.
basically, it was a project where the government registry was trying to find a way to reduce the barriers for SMEs trying to access finance from banking institutions. So this project had the government registry, it had one of the largest banks in that region, and blockchain kind of presented an opportunity to improve this process of accessing finance by streamlining the process of submitting your personal details, such as KYC details. And it turns out that blockchain, the way it's designed, it kind of allows us to restore control of our own personal data to the users that own it. So this government was trying to explore and see how could this technology potentially work for resolving a big issue in their country. And I ended up recommending that they should definitely consider blockchain technology as a way to streamline SME financing. And I learned a lot of lessons from the government of Canada. There's a state in Canada known as British Columbia, and they had implemented this solution. So I ended up borrowing a lot from that and recommending it to this African government. So I was happy to see that from that government, but I should mention that the reason that particular government was so open-minded to exploring the opportunities in this technology is because of some of the champions that were part of government and had a deep appreciation for this technology. So I do think for this thing to kind of seep into our public institutions, it requires a lot of advocacy and people who buy into the ethos of this technology.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that's a phenomenal story, because I mean, if you think about SME finance in terms of access to capital, it's a massive challenge across the continent. But as you've said, I mean, it's a gentle balance between understanding leaders in the structures that are progressive and that are fans of innovation and development. It's about having service providers in the ecosystem that can create the solutions, and hopefully that helps us to move the needle. So thank you for that observation. I could sit here and chat to you all day, all night, Mr. Kimani.
Yeah.
But I think we've run out of time for this episode, and maybe if we can twist your arm, we can have another discussion. I just wanted to first of all, take my hat off and say congratulations on the work that you've done. Selflessly working at trying to move our continent forward, trying to have the conversations and really flying the flag. I think that you're at the cusp of something phenomenal. I know you're also very involved with Phone Bank, and hopefully we can have a conversation about that. That's another wonderful startup story of success. So thank you very much for your time, and with that, I'll be able to release you.
Asante sana. Thanks for having me, and I hope we can share more stories in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. So there you have it, folks. That was it for this African Tech Conversation. A huge thank you to Michael Kimani. And if you want to follow him and get into his mind a little bit more, you can on Twitter at Pesa_Africa, and on LinkedIn by searching for Michael Kimani. And you can also check out his blog. That's kioneki.com, KIONEKI.com. So you can have a chat with him online because the conversation never ends, obviously. But also, we're also going to share more blockchain insights in the coming weeks and months. And thank you to the Cello Community Fund. And as always, you can have your say. We'd like to hear from you, and you can do so by clicking on the Have Your Say link in the show notes. So wherever you're listening, either on your microphone icon or on the right of your screen, if you're tuning in directly from African Tech Roundup, you can leave us a 60-second voice note reacting to this episode. And I think I'm going to start leaving little cookies inside the show notes so that you can, get tokens as a result of giving us your opinion. But you can have your say, and we'll definitely play that back on the show so that everybody can get an understanding of how you feel and what you're thinking. You can also reach us on Twitter. So our hashtag ATRUC, or via our handle African Roundup. We always love to hear from you, and we take your insights and feedback quite seriously. So if you vary our work, we can also invite you to participate by joining our Patreon community to help us grow and scale and continue producing the amazing stuff that we like to do, and allow us to be single-mindedly focused on creating value for you guys. So we're really, really, really excited about the series that we're going on, and we hope that the learning helps you not only in your immediate space, but also to spread the love, because blockchain is a very important part of Africa's future. And I think the more we share, the more we grow, the more our continent moves forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone from across the world, this has been a fantastic conversation. That's it for now, and thank you for listening. Until next time, take it easy. My name is Musa Kalenga, and I thank you for your attention. Cheerio.